Okay, today we start a new chapter. And the chapter is titled Outside of Europe Between World War I and World War II, or at least that's what I'm going to call it. I think it's a better description. And we're going to start with a teeny history of the moment. We remember that back in 1453, the Ottoman Empire, which started in modern-day Turkey, took over huge chunks of land and became a massive and important empire, including the great Eastern Roman Christian city of Constantinople, which they renamed Istanbul. Here's a map. Since everyone knows, I am the biggest fan of maps. I literally have one in my house on the wall. And you can see that all of this area here was controlled by the Ottoman Empire. In the 1800s, the Ottoman Empire starts to fall apart. It gets weaker. And we have dates here as to when certain parts of the Ottoman Empire declared and got independence from the Ottoman Empire. Since the 1800s, it has been weakening. We see that Greece first gets its independence in the 1820s, and that by the start of World War I, the empire was really just this area you see here in the kind of dark orange. We also know that World War I in part started because there was a competition to see who would take over this land right here. So in 1867, the Ottoman reformers, people within the Ottoman Empire, tried to take control of the government and introduce a constitution, which the Sultan, and that's the name of their leader, suspended. He said he quashed it. Okay, the word suspended is the wrong word here, especially when we're doing this for high school students, because being suspended means you come back. In this case, it was completely ended. It's a better word. A group of reformers called the Young Turks wanted a constitution. And in 1908, they pushed back and eventually got this constitution restored. Well, when World War I breaks out, the Ottoman Empire makes a terrible bet. And they bet on the German-Austrian side of the war to win, and they join in with them, thinking that if they joined with the Germans, that once Germany won, they would be given some land back in Eastern Europe, which they had lost. During the war, the Great British encouraged the North African, Arabian territories and territories in the Middle East to declare independence and or to fight against the Ottomans. And after the war, we're going to find out that Great Britain and France decide, since they're really the real decision makers in the Versailles Treaty after the war, although this is a different treaty, it's still within that moment, that they're going to split the Middle East, in this area here we call the Middle East, up amongst themselves. That the French are going to take this area in green, and that the British were going to take this area down here in orange. And they were going to leave the area of Arabia, which is below. Let's look at it here on this map. This is the area of Arabia. They were going to leave that to the people of the area to rule, and they were just going to take over this Middle Eastern area. Well, so let's now kind of go back. The Ottoman Empire had been destroyed because they bet on their side of the war lost, and then it was divided up after the war. And now we're going to get into a question about one of the regions within Armenia within the Ottoman Empire called Armenia. So Armenia is a historic land, oftentimes overlooked. Armenia was the first country to officially declare Christianity in like 200 and something. This country's been around for a long time. And here is Armenia on the map. You can see this area here that we call historic Armenia. Okay. And of course, here is modern day Turkey. Historic Armenia is much larger than modern day Armenia. So Armenia had historically been a Christian area in a Muslim empire. And we're going to see that at some point towards the end of the Ottoman Empire, Armenia asks for that the part of Armenia where there's more Christians than Muslims allowed to be independent. And apparently the Ottomans agreed. But when they joined World War I, they quickly took this back. And in part because Armenia had this connection to Russia. Now look, here's Russia, okay? Russia's Christian. Armenians are Christian. And there was fear that the Russians, who were against the Germans in war, would be able to come in and attack the Ottoman Empire from this direction. And during the war, the Ottomans accused the Christian Armenians of working with the Russians against them. And they start a massive attempt to force out or kill all of the Armenians from their empire. This is referred to as the Armenian Genocide. In our textbook, we call it the Armenian Genocide. We're going to get to some of the kind of sticky parts of this in a second. Well, it's all really kind of terrible and horrible. But during 1915, this is the beginning part of the war, the Ottomans rounded up about 500 Armenian intellectuals. We're talking about professors and leaders within the community. And they lived in Constantinople, the capital city. And they killed them or they sent them to forced labor camps. They then go into Armenia. And I want to pull this up. This is a map and it shows where there was large the circles are where there was large parts of Armenians who lived within Turkey. And of course, here is where we're going to find the Christian Armenia. They go into this area here, okay? And eventually through here, and they start rounding up and killing all of the men who could possibly. I want to ask you this. So they start rounding up all of the men who could theoretically fight against them in a war, and they start killing them or they start sending them to these forced labor camps. This is a war crime. You're not allowed to do this in war. You can't just kill everyone of a certain age that's a man because they're a threat to you. Is that a genocide? I don't know. I'm the last person who knows any of these things, right? But this is because they then deport all of the women and children and elderly to Syria, forcing them to walk through the desert, given no food, water. Many of the young girls were raped, beaten, forced into marriages with the local men who lived in those areas, these desert living people. And as a result, 1.5 million Armenians were killed, along with thousands of our Assyrians and Greeks who lived in the empire. Now, this is Syria, and here's where they're going to end up. So imagine you're living in this area, okay, or maybe around here, and you're a woman and you're an elderly or you're a child and you're not fighting age or certainly not prepared to march across this massive desert. We're talking about 100, maybe 1,000 plus miles without food, water, anything on an instant's notice. Yeah, 1.5 million killed. You guys, this is comparable to the Holocaust. Interestingly, Hitler goes down to the Middle East at one point and makes a famous speech where he says, "No one did anything about the Armenian genocide. Why should I be worried about it when I do it to the Jews, gypsies, homosexuals, a handicap, and other undesirables in Germany?" This was a model for the Holocaust. This should be compared and spoken of in the same sentence as the Holocaust. And the Turks, modern day Turkey, deny that this happened. There are people who deny the Holocaust happened. Doesn't mean it's true. Here are some images of people being marched through cities. Some more images. How do you do that to a child and a mother? You say, what about the Trail of Tears, Marina, with the Cherokee? No. I know. The US government does not admit publicly that this happened because Turkey's our friend. We don't want to make our friend angry because they're strategically important to us. Can I get a USA? President Obama, on his way out, said, I personally, as a person, as a man, believe the Armenian Genocide was a genocide, but it's the position of the US government that it didn't happen. Can I get a USA? Now, we move on. And we say that after the war, the country of Turkey itself was in question because the Ottoman Empire had been ended. Who's going to take over? And a lot of Europeans wanted to take over. They said, hey, this is Constantinople. This area is actually titled the Anatolian Peninsula. Before it's a country name, it's a peninsula name. It was Christian, part of the Eastern Roman Empire for 1,500 years. This was part of the Greek Empire during Alexander the Great, almost 2,000 years of European control. So they say, we're taking it back. Okay, here's our chance. Let's do it. This is backwards. This is upside down. But it doesn't work. We're going to find out that the Greeks attack. They try and come in this area here and take it back. The UK, the French, the Italians, so many people kind of half-heartedly after a horrible war decide they're going to come in and take this land, and they don't get it. They lose this land. I mean, they take part of it for short periods and then end up getting pushed out. This is an opportunity. This is a moment where the home court advantage really matters. So not just when the Lakers play at Staples or the Dodgers at Chavez Ravine, does home court matter, but even more so when it's a war in your own country. Ask the Vietnamese. President Wilson considered this to be the western border of Armenia in 1920. Wilson was a pretty honest broker. And the group that's going to take over in Turkey is going to be led by a guy named Mustafa Kemal, or Ataturk. He tries to modernize Turkey. He said, we got to fix this place up. We're going to create a limited democracy. We're going to eliminate many elements of Arabic culture, including the writing. We're going to use Western letters. We want to kind of be more European. He makes Turkey non-religious or a secular country that doesn't favor any religion. He gave women more rights, where in the Islamic faith, women oftentimes have less rights than even in the Christian faith at that point, where we know women in Christian areas didn't have many rights either in 1920. He banned women from wearing the veil, the face covering. And he gave women inheritance rights and eventually the right to vote. Similar time period to what we see in Europe. Most of the changes he made lived on after he died. So we now have a new country called Turkey. We have an old empire that's died called the Ottoman Empire, and we have a new country called Turkey that was created in the Anatolian Peninsula. And we also have the Middle East split up amongst the French and the British. And we're going to find that we have an area called Arabia that was also Ottoman land And in the next section, we're going to find out what happens there. But really, maybe the most important thing of this section is what happened to the Armenians. And how there's been such an effort to deny it. And even our government, the USA, freedom, denies it.